Hi, Yr10. Hope you are all well, and welcome to our first lesson of our half term of homeschool. So, it's really important that we keep on with the course, and so we are starting a new inquiry that we kind of did a prelude to last half term, and this is the inquiry question. It's how did the idea of liberty shape the fate of Britain in the Americas from 1707 to 1865? So let's get into it. So you can write that down as the inquiry question. But yes, this is the title. So I'm trying to keep it just like we would be in the classroom. I'd have this on the board and someone would say, "Is that the title? Should we write it down?" Yes, this is the title and you should write it down. So our key question for today is, why was the 7 Years' War a dangerous triumph for Britain? So we're going to look at a conflict that Britain was involved in. Obviously, this is a video, and if you need to pause it at any point, you can to write things down at your own pace, but I'm going to be going at my pace. But you can press the magic pause button when you feel you need to. So we're going to be looking at a conflict that Britain wins. It's triumphant in, it triumphs, it wins, it's victorious. But this victory comes at a cost, quite literally. And we're going to look at why this war, this 7 Year War, was a dangerous triumph for Britain. So let's go back a bit and think about what we have gathered about Britain and its relationship with France so far in this course. We know that Britain and France have a huge rivalry, and that rivalry goes all the way back to the 100 Years' War. And so there's a legacy of rivalry there going all the way back to the 1300s up until Agincourt, with that heroic failure where Britain manages to safely get back to England, but does get defeated by the French army. And we know that that final icing on the cake with that 100 Years' War is when Calais is lost in 1558. But the rivalry continues even after the 100 Year War. And the rivalry kind of centers around commerce. We know that Britain is developing into a commercial empire building power, and its strength ultimately comes from its ability to make money through trade. So we've looked at the East India Company, for example, and how it began to become a huge source of wealth for Britain as a business. And we know that money equals power. And so Britain's ability to make money on the global stage was its source of power. We've seen that in the East India Company. We've seen that in the way in which Britain uses enslaved Africans as labor to create wealth from crops like tobacco, sugar, cotton, etc. And so Britain's not the only power that wants to be involved in this global money making machine. France does as well. And so they're rivals on the world stage for empire and for commercial trading interests. Another source of rivalry ultimately is the identity difference between Britain and, sorry about that, about Britain between Britain and France. So let's look at some key differences that mean they have some identity clashes. Obviously, the people of Britain are English and crucially Protestant. After the Reformation, which we've looked at in terms of the Elizabethan course, when England becomes a Protestant nation, it stays a Protestant nation. And the Glorious Revolution, where James II, who was seen as the Catholic king, is run out of England effectively, means that Protestantism triumphs. And so England prides itself in the 1700s on being a Protestant nation. It also prides itself, after the Glorious Revolution, on being a constitutional monarchy. So it has a monarch, it has a king, but the king has ceded some powers to the people. in the form of Parliament and the Bill of Rights, which gives Parliament and more people more authority and power in the running and governing of Britain. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have a very strong monarch, because we're going to see it does. But Britain prides itself on being the beacon of liberty. This idea that Britain is it can export this particular brand of liberty, of constitutional monarchy, of Protestantism, of relative religious freedom. It prides itself on championing liberty. On the other hand, from the English perspective, France means the absolute opposite. They're French, they're Catholic, which in the eyes of Protestants is the ultimate sin. And they still have an absolute monarchy where their king reigns supreme and has total power. And so for the English, the French basically are tyrants. They believe that they represent liberty, whereas the French represent tyranny. And so in 1763, there is a conclusion of a war between England and France called the 7 Years' War. And so write this down in your book: Britain's victory in the 7 Years' War, concluding in 1763. England wins this war. It wins against its biggest rival, France. And because of its victory, it is able to pick up the French colonies that France had in the Americas. So it wins Canada, it takes Louisiana, which is on the other side of America, and the southern tip of America, Florida. And so basically, the 7 Years' War is Britain's great revenge for the defeat of the 100 Years' War. It means that Britain ends up being the most powerful, I guess, superpower of the 18th century. And so it's literally sitting on top of the world. It has defeated its rival. It is victorious. So after the 7 Years' War, this is what the British Empire, and I guess this is the early British Empire, looks like. There's Great Britain and Ireland. It now has a bigger part of Canada, and its colonies in America over here have increased. So Britain owns more land, more influence, more power, more money in the Americas. And also we know it has the Caribbean colonies, but also it has some crucial territories and influence in the west coast of Africa, but not in the form of huge territories, more in the form of forts. This is the slave trading coast effectively. And then also crucial points in what is now modern day India. But back then, the key prize in the British Empire was really the Americas. This is where the source of Britain's power, its commercial interests, its trading interests was coming from. And so this was the pride and joy of the empire. And even, after the victory in the 7 Years' War, King George III said, "I glory in the name of Britain." And Britain was feeling itself. It had defeated France. It was, the greatest, most powerful nation that had an empire in this time. And also actually write this down. So the Treaty of Paris, this is the treaty that basically ends the 7 Years' War and gives France basically give over, because they lose, Canada and the Mississippi Valley, which is over here on the map, to Britain. So Britain's sitting pretty. It's doing really well. But what challenges does having a huge, powerful empire pose for Britain? Just have a think about that. So, what challenges come with being powerful? Well, one key problem is, in order to remain powerful, you've got to be able to have strong defenses. So you need a navy and you need a strong army. And the problem with having a strong navy to defend your colonies and your empire overseas on the seas, and a huge land army against potential enemies, trying to go to war with you, trying to take back land, is that all of that costs money, a lot of money. And so who pays the cost for their country to be the boss? Well, this is how the economics of power effectively works. So pause this video at this point, and I want you to, in your book, write out this gap fill. All the missing words are in the box down here, and fill it out as you go along. So pause it and complete this gap fill. So let's talk about how or who pays for the cost of the country to be the boss. And not necessarily just, the cost of maintaining an empire, but all of the services a government provides. Who pays for that? Where does this money come from? How does the king get rich? How does the government have money to fund wars, to fund defense? So the people primarily are the answer. And this kind of even goes back, if you think, to the feudal system, where in return for land or return for something else, the people pay to their superiors effectively. And it hasn't changed even in modern times. We are taxed by our government. So the people, we vote for our representatives in Parliament, our MPs. And because we have given them legitimacy through our vote, they have the right to raise taxes. So they can raise taxes. They can say, okay, we want to tax food, we want to tax defense, we need money for this. And because we have given them the money, because we've given them our votes, they have a mandate to collect our taxes. So they collect our taxes. We pay our taxes to the government because they represent us. So this is called taxation with representation. And it's fair because we have agreed, it's kind of like a social contract. We've agreed that, well, okay, we voted for you, and on our behalf, you will make laws and policies that will best protect our interests. So you can tax us because we voted for you. And generally that's how taxation and governance and governing works. And so because of that, the government could fund a strong and protected empire because it could tax the people. But it's not as simple as that, because actually the colonists, who by this point are quite numerous in number in America, these English colonists who are living in America, who have set up communities, societies, cities, actually don't have representation in the Westminster Parliament. And because Britain had become this powerful empire and was now in a lot of debt, it needed some money. So what you're going to do is you're going to watch this clip. The link is in the instructions on this classroom task. Watch the video clip with the subheading, the Stamp Act. I want you to do the 5 W's: when, where, who, what, and why. And then I want you to answer this question in your book. How far did the Stamp Act restore peace to the relationship between Britain and the American colonists? That should say. I'm going to change that. See, this is literally live. Okay. And the American colonists, because there is no American government right now. The British government is the American government. Okay, so answer these questions in your book and watch the clip to do that. Okay, so now that we've got an overview of the American colonists and their struggle for liberty, I want you to do this gap fill similar to the one you did before. All the missing words are at the bottom. Read it carefully. Show your understanding about the American colonists and their struggle for liberty. So, we know that the American colonists are passionate about this idea of liberty, and that's the forefront of our inquiry question about this quest for liberty. So I want you to read this source. It is a letter that appears in Boston in a newspaper called the Boston Gazette. Boston is up here on the east coast of America, and this was a really prominent city in America. And back then, this is America. Okay, we think of America now as this great, huge continent, but Only this bit really has been settled by Euro Americans, by British colonists at this point. So I want you to read the source and answer these two questions in your book. Why did the Boston Gazette oppose the Stamp Act so strongly? And how far does this letter show signs that the American colonists respected their British identity? Okay, so do that in your books. And that's the last task for today. But I want to just go through one last thing. So I'm sure you all have had a chance to reflect on the government's announcement, and it's come as a shock to us as much as it is a shock to you all. And I'm really going to miss having you guys in the classroom and doing this live as we would normally do, as all your teachers will probably feel the same way. But we do need to just keep on pressing, and I cannot stress the importance of working hard. And so what we want to do is when you do a piece of work, we're going to give you some feedback just to check your progress. And so this is going to be our feedback mark. It's out of 4, and this is the scale. So 4 is excellent, you put in a lot of effort, it's brilliant, positive, amazing, phone call home maybe. 4. 3 is good, you're working well, you've done all right, but next time you could probably strive for excellence. If we give you a 2, that means you need to improve, we're not happy, not good enough. 1 is inadequate, you definitely need to redo that. In fact, what you handed in is disrespectful to yourself and to us. Inadequate. That might be a phone call home at that point. And unacceptable is you just haven't even done it, basically. That is a straight negative, no excuses, disappointing. So this is a way for us to keep track. Periodically, I'm sure your heads of year will ask how you're doing, and this grading on our mark book will be what we'll use to give you feedback, and it also be helpful for you to let you know how well you are doing. We're always here on Google Classroom at the time of your lesson. Even if it's after the lesson, if you send us a message, we will try our best to get back to you as soon as possible. We already miss you guys. We hope you are safe and well. And let's just try and get through this half term as best we can. Okay. Thank you, Year 10. Take care.